would you like to start?
Okay, dear students, good afternoon for everyone. And sorry. Okay, it's a great pleasure to be with you here today. And our presenter is Professor Dr. Teresa Franklin, who is Fulbright specialist. During her visit in Eskişehir Technical University, a series of seminars have been organized for faculty members, administrations, and students as well. Today, it is about Students Development Seminar. What students need to know and be able to do. Implementing quality in the academic experience. Before her presentation, let me introduce Dr. Teresa Franklin. Seminars have been organized for faculty members, administrations, and students as well. Today, it is about Students Development Seminar. What students need to know and be able to do. Implementing quality. Is everything fine? My voice is coming? Okay. Dr. Teresa Franklin is a Professor Emerita Educational Studies, Instructional Technology in the Padden College of Education, Ohio University, Athens in Ohio. She has a passion for teaching and learning through the integration of technology into curriculum and instruction that spans 40 years. Research interests include program evaluation and accreditation, curriculum design, examination of online learning environments, mobile technologies, virtual learning environments, and game development for digital learning. Dr. Teresa Franklin, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I think the day is our technology problem day. We've been doing well, but this seems to be having troubles today. So I hope that we can get this to work correctly, but good afternoon. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you and to talk about the quality in higher education institutions, because there's a new process going on in the country, in Turkey, that is all about quality and developing quality assurance within institutions. My focus over the past few years has been the evaluation of colleges and the programs within those colleges, including not just colleges of education, but also engineering and business, using what is called the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, which is a Deming cycle for quality. And so with this presentation, I hope to be able to help you understand better what's going on campus concerning quality. And with that, we'll move on. So first of all, there are learning outcomes. As your year progresses over this next year, you'll see a lot of outcomes, learning outcomes. In this particular case, I'm going to talk about THECA, or what is called TEC-C, and the quality assurance process. Relate the awareness of the accreditation program review and quality assurance processes, summarize what quality assurance means for students at an institution, identify several university activities in the quality assurance process, relate the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle for continuous improvement to quality assurance, identify ways students, because this is really a seminar for students to talk to students about how they can become part of that quality assurance process, and to examine the ways students can be involved once they've graduated. So why were you invited to this presentation? You may want to know and have questions about that. Well, first of all, ESTU wants to build a culture of quality on campus as part of ongoing continuous improvement, which has been recommended by YOCOC. Both the academic and administrative staff want you to be aware of the changes that are occurring on campus, and that's going to support this development of quality culture. So we're going to talk a little bit about what each group is doing on campus. So first of all, what are the administrative staff doing? Well, the ESTU administrative staff have been working on implementing and evaluating a strategic plan, about developing learning outcomes at the institutional level and then looking at programs for their learning outcomes, collecting data on key performance indicators found in the strategic plan. So they've been working on this for the past year. They're in the second part of the cycle. And at the same time, the academic staff have been developing learning outcomes at the program and course level and increasing learning, teaching and learning methods in the classroom to improve student learning. So all of this is about improving student learning. The development of the curriculum in their programs to meet the program accreditation and our program review process. So they are looking back at the ESTU strategic plan and they're saying to themselves, okay, these are the goals that the institution has put forth. These are their strategic priorities. And so how does our curriculum and our program learning outcomes and our course learning outcomes align to that strategic plan? Because the idea of quality assurance is that everyone is involved, from the students to the administration, to the academic staff, to the people that take care of the buildings, to the people who do the cafeteria. Everyone on campus should be part of this quality process. So when you look at student learning, there's an interconnection. First of all, you have your content that your academic staff delivers and that you're involved in learning. So you have knowledge, skills, and attitudes that are needed for a particular field that you're going into. Then you have program learning outcomes, course learning outcomes, and assessments that check to see if you have the knowledge, skills, and attitudes for that discipline. Around that, you have quality assurance and accreditation. Is your program accredited or has it been reviewed to make sure that it is meeting the standards of the discipline and also the industry? You have university learning outcomes, and then you also have faculty learning outcomes within your units. And last but not least, these things are working together to actually meet the needs of society and the economics of society to help generate more industry within your country. And also you have a political influence that always is part of higher education. So as you're moving forward in your degree programs, you're looking to the future. You're looking at your roles, you're looking at the jobs you'll have. How are you going to contribute to society? Because that is the real goal of higher education, is to help people become contributing members of society. Are you going to be a global citizen, family member, a worker with a skilled job, maybe a community member? Everyone is going to have to be a lifelong learner, because what we're seeing is people will change jobs 7 to 10 times in their lifetime. So we have this lifelong learning piece that we need to be part of. Taking care of the environment. Climate issues are paramount to our success of our countries in the near future. And so we have to be stewards of our environment. So you may have a job like a dentist, a hygienist, a banker, a teacher, an engineer, whatever. But right now, as you're moving through the institution, you're looking to the future and you're looking for those roles and jobs that you're going to play. And as part of that, higher education is under accountability issues. So higher education is expected to be accountable to the accreditation organizations and standards, to program standards and best practices, to the transfer of credit so that people can move back and forth between programs in different countries. Funding concerns, in higher education, there are always funding concerns. Government expectations on employment. So what does the country and the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Labor actually say about what jobs are going to be available? Business and labor experts are offering to higher education their expertise of what's going to be needed next. And then of course you always have parents and students yourself having expectations on employment for when you leave the institution. So this makes really measuring quality very complex. So if you look at Turkey, you have the Council of Higher Education, and with the Council of Higher Education comes the Turkish Higher Education Quality Council, what we call TEKSI or YOKAK. And this organization does what we call external evaluation. They have established standards for institutions of higher ed using a rubric, and they go in and accredit the institution. The institution at the same time is responsible to the Council of Higher Education because they set the curriculum. They are part of the Quality Commission that coordinates internal quality, and they have their own institutional self-evaluation. The institution has programs, and programs have program review, they have accrediting agencies, they have discipline standards and best practices. And at the same time, their faculty are developing curriculum that meets the Turkish National Qualification Framework, specific discipline learning outcomes, and any best practices that need to be known because of an industry that your particular discipline would be working in. So you have a lot of people who are looking at quality and a lot of people who are trying to discern, you know, are we doing the things that will provide a quality education to our students so that they can leave the institution and be a part of this greater society. So I'm going to talk about YOCOC and its relationship to what we call the Institutional Evaluation, External Evaluation Program. And if you look at this diagram here, you will see that YOCOC, or TEC-C, has a lot of organizations that it has examined and looked at to make sure that it is really part of the global community of education. And so these different institutions like IQA, which is the Association of Quality Assurance Agencies in the Islamic World, CIQN is the CHIA International Quality Group, and so forth. Each of these have standards. And so TEC-C has worked to align itself and to see, are there standards from this group that would work in Turkey? Maybe some, maybe none, but it has begun to build this, or has built this set of standards for institutions to be accredited. The other issue that YOCOC has to deal with is the fact that as part of this process, it has responsibility to the Turkey 11th Development Plan. And so it wants to make sure that what it's doing would help meet the needs of that plan as well. So as I said, it's a very complex system. You have lots of different groups that are within the government that work together and work separately, but all working toward quality. If you want more information, you can go out to yococ.gov.tr home, and the different text materials are out there that actually explain the process in great detail. It would take longer than most of us have the attention span for to do all of these at one time today. So my advice is, if you're interested in this and want to be a part of this work, that you go out and familiarize yourself with these particular resources. So what is ESTU doing to determine quality? Well, the first thing, it's part of what we call now institutional quality assurance. And that is, it is going through a self-evaluation process. It will have an external evaluation. The evaluation of teachers and school leaders and student assessments will all be examined, looking to see if the institution is in a continuous process of improving its quality and equity and efficiency. The way it does this is through a process called continuous improvement. And continuous improvement is called Plan, Do, Check, Act. It's a continuous improvement cycle that is being used on the campus and throughout Turkey. And what's going to happen is that right now, your institution, ESTU, is here at doing its internal quality assurance, building a strategic plan. It has built this, it's done a SWOT analysis, it's done most of these things that are here in this first box. But when you go over to the do, it is collecting meaningful data to make sure that what they thought was going to happen would happen. They're looking at research, teaching, and so forth. Then it will go down here and check its strategic plan performance. So it's monitoring the plan. What does the data tell them? They're doing analysis and seeing if there are issues that actually need to be changed as part of this process. Because it could be that they didn't ask the right questions. Sometimes in research or when we're doing an analysis, we don't really ask the right question to get the correct data. So as part of the strategic plan performance monitoring, it will look at all this data and say, did we ask the right questions? And did we get the data that we needed in order to answer our questions? And so that is part of the check of the cycle. Then they will go to what we call the act part in which they will make data-driven decisions from this data. So they will update the criteria, they'll update their standards, maybe change their program learning outcomes, replan, and start the cycle again. Again, quality assurance is what they're hoping to achieve. And in order to do that, they have to have continuous improvement. So how does this connect to YOCOC or TechC? Well, first of all, every year, ESTU has to do an annual institutional self-evaluation report, and they send this to TechC. Then TechC posts all of these self-evaluation reports online. So you can read any of the reports from any institution online at that email or at that website address I gave you earlier, but it's also here. Then after a couple of cycles, they will be invited to be part of the institutional external evaluation program. And in that process, they will then be evaluated to see how they are doing compared to the TechC rubric. The external evaluation process has the following steps. So this is what's going to happen at your institution probably in the next year. They will submit their self-evaluation report. TechC will determine which institutions are ready to be evaluated. They will build an evaluation team. That team will set up a pre-visit to get everything in order for a group of people, a team, an evaluation team to come to the campus for a site visit. After that site visit, then there will be an institutional feedback report in which the evaluation team will talk about the things that they read in the self-evaluation report compared to what they found on campus. And that will be part of developing whether they are accredited or not. There is an expectation that this will happen once every 5 years. The categories that will be examined when the evaluators come to campus are called quality assurance system. Do you have a quality assurance system? What's happening with your education and training? What about research and development? What kinds of research are you doing? Do you have the proper facilities? Things of that nature. Service to society. How is the higher ed institution actually, the work it's doing, how is it actually serving society? And then, do you have a management system? The Think rubric has 5 levels, and this is really about looking at where an institution is in its maturity. And so it has these 5 possible levels. So the first level is no implementation available. The institution has not really been looking at these maturity levels and building a plan, a strategic plan for how they're going to work through the process. The second level is planning. So are there plans, but maybe they're not quite implemented yet. The next level is planning and implementing. That is, they have a strategic plan, they've decided on their priorities, and now what they're going to do is begin to implement that plan and gather data. At 4, they are planning, implementing, checking, and acting. So they've actually gone through the entire process of the PDAC process. So they've planned, they've implemented, which is the do, they've checked their implementation, and now they're acting to replan again. And then level 5 is what we call exemplary implementation, in which they're doing things that other institutions should know about or other institutions might want to implement themselves. So it's a very interesting process in which they read through the rubric, look at the criteria, and determine where they might fit with that criteria. So to give you an example of a rubric page, this is one. This is the criteria: student-centered learning, teaching, and assessment. And so here you'll see that they have the definition of what they mean by student-centered learning, teaching, and assessment. They then tell you what they might expect to see there with the teaching methods and techniques. So this is just looking at teaching methods and techniques. Then they use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to tell you the level at which you might be doing these things. So each level has a little definition. And down below, they tell you the evidence that you might use to actually show that you are doing the different criteria. So if you're at level 4 maturity, you might present pieces of information that would support that student-centered practices are monitored and improved with the involvement of relevant internal stakeholders. So that would mean students have maybe evaluated courses, students have commented or made recommendations to different persons on campus that these courses could be improved by doing this. Or students have said, wow, that problem-based learning method in that particular class was fantastic. And so then that might be a level 5, because there may be a case where that would be shared with other institutions so that they can do problem-based learning. The evaluation team, I think it's important that you know about these people. They are a peer group that are academicians, they're administrative staff, there are other students. Students are really important to this process. So don't forget that. Employer and professional practitioners, international experts. These are what the team will be made up of that comes to visit your campus. And students bear the same status as other team members. So you can, you as students could be on these peer evaluation teams, and there's a training process in order to do that. And I would suggest or encourage you to do so. Did I have a question, possibly? Let me just check for a moment.
I think no.
Okay, I heard someone talking. I thought maybe they had a question. Okay, so how and what does the evaluation team review? Well, first of all, they do observations. They come in and observe the campus. They look at the buildings, the classrooms. They ask about labs and those sort of things. They talk about the internet system. Do you have backups for your system and so forth? They will look at how programs are organized and how complete they are, and do they have program learning outcomes, and do they have course learning outcomes, and matrices to show how these are aligned so that they can see that the course learning outcomes align to the program learning outcomes. The next thing they will do will be interviews. And so they will interview stakeholders on the campus, the administration, the academic staff. They will talk to some of the people who help do the labs, like technicians. They will talk to all the different people on campus, including students. So there will be a student group where they talk with students. They may talk to them as club members or so forth. And so students, again, really important part of this interview process to tell the evaluation team what is going on campus. So other methods, they'll look at oral and written comments the institution has made about itself and its students. They'll look at recruitment, how are students recruited? How do they matriculate across and stay with the program, or do they drop out? So they'll want to know those kind of numbers. They'll look at evidence from projects that students have done, maybe meetings or exhibitions that students have had, and they will then look at classroom practice, testing methods, assessments, and so forth. So all of these processes, the observations, the interviews, and then other methods all come together with the evaluation team to paint a picture of your institution and what goes on there. And what you hope happens is that the institution, a self-evaluation report that they write, and the picture that they painted it in, and the picture when you come to campus are the same picture. And so it's really important that you as students be part of this process. After the evaluation team leaves the campus, they go back and they write a report. In fact, they write 2 reports, one called the IFR and one called the IAR. And these 2 publications are then placed out on the web so that you can read what is said about the visit. And then the IAR goes to the accreditation board that actually reviews it and determines if the institution is accredited. Decision-making, that's the big one. What will happen is as they go through the rubric, they are adding up points. So quality assurance system is worth 200 points. Education and training is worth 400 points. Research and development is worth 150. Service to society, 100. And having a management system to keep all the data and scores and recruitment and all that stuff together is 150 points. So this will total 1,000 points if you were to get all the points in every single rubric. The way they decide on accreditation is they have two levels. First is full accreditation, and that is if you score, the institution scores 650 and above. So ESTU, if they score 650 and above, would be fully accredited. Conditional accreditation is between 500 and 649 points. And so that level moves them to the point where they will have some opportunity to improve things and find out if, how they're doing within a 2-year period. So in 2 years, they'll come back and ask them, did you improve these things? Have you gone through the quality assurance process to improve things over the 2 years? Now, for those who score below 500, then there will be a team built that helps them kind of move along in the process so that they can improve their practices on campus. So that's the process that the institution as a whole will be going through. It is called the Institutional External Evaluation Program, and it is a review process that looks at every aspect of the campus and what is going on that campus, hoping to find quality within all the different programs and activities on the campus. But let's look at a little closer, because this may be closer to home to most students, and that is looking at programs. Programs are supposed to help students demonstrate that they have the competencies to work in that particular discipline in which they have been studying for the past 2 to 4 years. So what is it that students know and are able to do, and what attitudes are needed by students when they graduate to be successful in their employment? So that is a big question that academic staff ask as they work within their disciplines. So over the past year, academic staff have been preparing for this institutional external review. They have been looking at program accreditation and our program review as indicated by the particular institution's strategic plan. So they are in this quality assurance cycle as well, but they are doing it from a program accreditation, program review, program development process. Now, if you're in engineering, you've probably heard of MUDEC. That is the group, that is the accrediting agency for engineering in Turkey. You have others. I've put the website down at the bottom. You can go out and look at all the different approved accrediting agencies in Turkey. Now, an accrediting agency is an interesting thing because its job is to bring professionals within the field, and we'll use engineering as an example, in the field of engineering together to determine a group of standards that every student should know and be able to do when they graduate with an engineering degree from ESTU. In fact, any program that is accredited, the students should all graduate with those standards. So MUDEC may accredit at other institutions as well, but you as a student are supposed to be able to know and do the standards and demonstrate that you've been successful in accomplishing those standards. And so we use accreditation as a way of promoting quality within our programs on campus. Now, from time to time, we have programs that do not have accrediting agencies. That's not uncommon. We have the same thing in the US. But accreditation and program review are a little bit different. Accreditation has an external peer reviewers. Remember, I told you all the professionals in that field come together to build standards. Well, these professionals develop criteria that are very specific to that discipline. And they build these standards and then use these standards as criteria for reviewing programs at institutions. Program review, if you do not have an accrediting agency, is an internal process. that may or may not use peers in the review process and may or may not use professional standards. It may instead use what we call best practices in that field, because the professionals have not come together to actually develop an accrediting process. We have both types in our institutions all across the United States. And I think here at ESTU, you are in the process of also looking at accreditation for your programs that can be accredited by agencies, but you're also looking at internal program review for those for which there are no agencies. So this will be a process that is ongoing, and you will probably hear faculty or your academic staff talk about over time. Again, these resources, as I showed you before, provide you with information in greater depth about each of these aspects. The next thing that academic staff have been doing is really developing their curriculum. They've been working on making sure that they are aligned to the NQF's higher education Turkish standards. They've been checking if they are MUDEC accredited. They've been checking to see if they are aligned there. They've been looking at best practices. They've had people from industry talk to them about what's needed. So they are in this process of curriculum development, in which they are also showing us, building assessments and aligning to program learning outcomes and course learning outcomes. Excuse me just a second. So while this is going on, they've been building program documentation. And if you look on the web, you'll see lots of information out there about your particular program, its mission, its goals, its program learning outcomes, how it's aligned to different standards, maybe the course learning outcomes. Some of them are still working on that, but those are out there. And matrices that show the relationship of those program learning outcomes and the standards. So this program documentation is a critical part of how we look at quality assurance, to see that at every level it's been, work of the institution has been examined. So if you were to go out on the Faculty of Engineering, you would see the departments listed. I'm going to use computer engineering today as an example, but here are the different, you can see the different ways in which they have built out their website. You can see the profile of the program. You can see the key learning outcomes that have come from the NQFs. These are also aligned so that they have transfer credit to other organizations, to other countries. You can see the field qualifications that will be expected, and these are the things that you will need to know and be able to do before you graduate. And this is a crosswalk that I did, in which I looked to see how they had met all the different standards. And you can see that your institution also has some standards here in yellow that they are attending to. So these are institutional learning outcomes, as well as the NQFs and some of the discipline-specific ones. Now, when I finish the crosswalk, there are a couple that need to be attended to, and so I noted that for them. The next thing that faculty are doing is learning about active learning strategies. So they're looking into problem-based learning, project-based learning, inquiry learning, engineering design, and how all of these can be implemented in typical courses, not just for the engineering course, but for all the courses on campus, so that we are using a more active strategy where students are doing things and they're demonstrating that they know to others. So, big question. You've been here. Why is this important to you? Well, first of all, higher education is in an influx of change, and it must change because work and career are being impacted by changes in technology and by climate change in particular. And so all of these outside influences are impacting higher education, because we need graduates that will have the proper education and proper training to move into fields that will help us with solve these problems that are technological and also have to do with climate change and the world in which we live. So we need graduates from quality institutions, and this quality assurance process is part of developing those quality institutions. The work of higher education now has 4 parts. There's the part where you come to campus and you learn, or you learn online virtually. But these are really more about traditional jobs in many cases. So now we're finding that we don't just learn, but at times we have to unlearn so that we can have on-demand models for learning, ready to fill those gaps that are caused by technology, by climate change, and by other problems around the globe. And then finally, because technology will change and because jobs will change, we have to have lifelong learning so that workers will be able to embrace new and continuous learning over their lifetime. So my goal here is to say to you, volunteer to participate in these institutional external evaluations. Volunteer to be a student member on committees on campus. Participate when you leave and graduate as an alumni so that you can answer surveys from ESTU and tell them what you learned while you were at ESTU and things that maybe you wish you would have learned while you were at ESTU. But you need to be a part of this. You have a role in this, and you have a role in becoming and helping to make this institution a quality institution. So quality occurs at all levels, from the top to the bottom. Every part of the institution is looking at how they can improve their quality so that students have the quality education for their new job market. So, any questions?
Okay, I'm just checking the box. On the box, there's no question, but maybe directly they sent you. Teresa, you may.
Let's see, let me check.
Okay. Dear students, you may ask something.
Okay, I have a direct message here. It says, many international PhD students come to Turkey with different experiences that could benefit enormously and contribute to quality of education in Turkey. Unlike many countries here in Turkey, employment opportunities such as research assistantship is only reserved for local students. I think this affects quality in so many ways. As other countries do, some employment opportunities should have been left open on merit. I think you have a noteworthy point there. One of the really interesting things is that I think your country is new educationally in many ways, and they are in the process of trying to bring more quality to education. Yes, I do think that there are issues concerning whether people are aligned into this job because of a score, or is there a job maybe, or is it maybe they should be aligned because they have certain skills or a skill set that would match better rather than the score. So that's always a question. We have that same issue sometimes in the US, but I do think that the more that graduate students and undergraduates can attend conferences in the area, around the country, maybe in neighboring countries, that you get a chance to see other things that are going on around the world and what education is like there, and you bring those things back to your institutions. So you have an opportunity to participate in this process of quality assurance, and this is a good time to have your voice heard. So I think, thank you so much for the question, and please, I encourage you to volunteer and be part of the process.
Yeah, one of our participants, Ismail Mausemano, please. We are not able to hear you. You may speak.
Okay, now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sorry. I have one question about volunteering. Will it affect my my educational career as a student? For example, if I go with volunteer with some universities or something like that, I will lose some classes or something like that, you know?
I think that's one of those things that you'd have to work out with the committee. That I serve as an international observer on the committee, and we always kind of work around the days when I can work and when I can't, and we've had other issues with that where somebody couldn't do it. And so we worked around the time. So I think it's a matter of the committee and figuring out where people can meet and where they can't, and when they could and when they couldn't. But I think that this is I know you think about missing classes, but the value of visiting with other institutions and visiting with your peers and also being with those faculty members who are part of those evaluation processes is very valuable. It often allows you to network in ways you never thought of.
Thank you.
So one more question from Mehmet Selçuk İrde. Let me read. My question is about what you mean by climate change. Is it a change in meteorological conditions or organizational climate change?
Actually, that's a good question, but it's both. We have climate change, which is the fact that our world is getting warmer. We have less water, which will in turn eventually mean less food to feed people. So we will have economic problems because of that. So every time somebody says climate change, the first thing they think of is meteorology. But the problem of climate change is that it encompasses everything. It is an economic problem. It is a health problem. And you just look at what we've had this pandemic. It is a problem with people being able to feed themselves. So we're going to have unrest because of scarcity of resources. But you have to remember that climate change impacts everything. If we can't live on this earth, we're in serious trouble. So climate change is critical. But also the fact that we have technological change. So we have automation. Now everybody says, well, we've had automation. We've been building cars for some time with automation. But the problem is, or the thing that's going to happen is that technology is going to begin to put robots onto these different locations. And these robots will have to be taken care of by people. So people are going to have to learn to work with robots, because you will be in charge of making sure these robots do what they are supposed to do on this line of work. We're going to have more and more robots in our hospitals delivering food, delivering medicines, and that nurses and doctors are going to have to work with. So there's a lot of technological things that we're going to see. Maybe you even saw the flying car the other day, 2 days ago on television. We're going to have policies and procedures for how this technology governs, or how we allow it to do the things that it does, and how we as people interact with those technological devices. And so there's a lot of policy issues. So those of you who may be interested in government and policy, there are climate issues of how we're going to organize our climate and how we're going to take care of our world so that we have enough to eat and enough to drink, and we'll be able to live on this planet. All of these things are interconnected, because some will be technological solutions, some will not. Some will be solutions in which we as people have to change our behavior. So that would be a climate change within an organization. So maybe as an organization, we decide that we're not going to do carbon credits, or we as an organization decide we're going to put up windmills, solar panels to help take care of the electricity on our campuses. So it's actually both. It's a climate change within an organization and organizations around the world, and it's climate change for our world as a being, as the world.
Can I ask a question?
Oh yes, I have someone else who would like to weigh in on this answer. So this is Dr. Doug Franklin.
Yes, I'm the. Pictures up.
I'm on.
Well, you got to mute your microphone.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm up here. Sorry, they moved it.
We're sharing an office. I'm here with Dr. Teresa as a YOCOC evaluator and observer. And I guess I either misunderstood the question, or I'm just going to provide another opportunity here. For me, it's the methodological change as a focus on higher education is all of the issues for change that's going to be dealt with society. The majority of those issues are going to be dealt with by higher education. And so as change is a constant, And we've already been through 5 industrial model changes over the last 200 or 300 years. The time period of this change has been exponential. It's moving much quicker. And so an institution of higher education has to be forward-looking enough to understand those changes and to modify the educational processes and the research. And that's truly the purpose of quality assurance. And that's the underlying theme in everything that Dr. Teresa was talking about as far as accreditation processes, change processes. It is creating tools for the university to understand changes in society, changes in that are occurring, and being able to move the institution to address those changes. So I didn't look at it as a meteorological issue. I looked at it as a methodological issues. What are the methods of quality and why are they being used? I don't know if that answered your question, but I thought it was important to clarify.
Well, great, because there are multiple views on all of this. And quite frankly, it's going to take all these different views in order to make this happen. I think the days of working in your office by yourself to discover something are over. Most of that work is done by teams. I worked in just recent past with a team of 5 engineers in which we designed different kinds of games and to be used within educational settings to help improve math scores and science scores. And so this was a team effort to do this. We had myself as an educator, engineers, computer science programmers, all of us together trying to develop these educational games that would teach engineering concepts that had to do with math and science. So, and for that we won an award. So it's always interesting to know that teams are really important, and that's one of the 21st century skills that the NQFs, the National Qualification Frameworks for Higher Education in Turkey, look at. So that's one of those pieces of that program learning outcomes that you'll see over and over again. So any final questions?
One more question from our YouTube channel,
Okay.
And Cem Eren Özbilgin. I'm just reading the question. Dear Dr. Franklin, have you ever think about how the quality evaluation process would affect if the current grading system abandoned by the college? Could it be possible to evaluate quality grades?
I think that over time, we actually had this discussion yesterday in a administrative discussion, our meeting where we had administrators and people who are responsible for research centers and institutes and things of that nature. And we were talking about the grading system. I think that is something that will have to be discussed. YOCOC is the group that we work with as observers and as part of this. And so I think that that's an important piece for us to really consider and take back to YOCOC, because if you're not going to have a evenly distributed grading system, or a grading system that is equitable and the same for every single person on campus, then that could be a problem for quality assurance. And so I do think that is the process. Now, if you're talking about, as I read this, just to make sure, you say, could it be possible to evaluate quality without a grade? Well, you don't get a grade when I think that's a misconception that people have. You don't really get a grade. What you get is a maturity level. So are you an institution that's just at the planning stage? Are you an institution at planning and implementing? Have you gone all the way through the plan, do, check, act? That is, you've planned, you've implemented, you've gathered data, so you've checked it, and now you're going to act on that data. And then are you doing things that are higher up on the ladder? That is, you're doing things that are exemplary and should be shared with other institutions. So it's not really a grade. I think students are used to grades. They like grades because grades say I'm better than somebody else, but this is actually not a grade. This is where you are in maturity as an institution. And I think that's a misnomer, but by people who talk about rubrics as checklist or rubric as a score. It's really a maturity level. How are you doing in the quality assurance process? Because if you don't know where you are in that process, you can't improve. So you have to have a place to start. So once the YOCOC comes with the evaluation team, or sends the evaluation teams to your campus, they look at your campus and they say, you're at this maturity or so forth. They say, here's where you are in that process. And now these are things you can do to improve. No one gets better without knowing where they are. You have to know where you are so that you can improve yourself. And that's the same thing that's happening in this evaluation process. We lots of times think we know where we are, and sometimes we have to have some reality check on where we are. And so this is part of that process of determining where the institution is in maturity and how it can improve itself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Teresa. I think no more question. And we are very happy to host you here. And also thank you for all for your participation and contribution. If no question, we may finish the meeting, I think.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak. And I hope that if you are around or on campus or something and want to come by, you're welcome to come by, and I'd be happy to talk with you more about this particular subject. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for everyone for their participation. See you in our next meeting. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.